The fall of the queen. The battlefield burned like a storm of fire. Smoke rose high into the dark sky, the sound of weapons and screams filling the air. The warrior queen stood at the front, her armor shining with the marks of battle, her blade dripping with the blood of her enemies. For years, her name had been feared across the galaxy, whispered by friend and foe alike. She was the unbroken shield, the roaring storm, the queen who never bent, never bowed. Her army followed her with pride, soldiers of iron will and endless loyalty. She led them into battles where no one else dared to go, and always, always, she brought them victory. Her enemies called her cruel, her people called her fierce, and all called her unstoppable. But even the strongest warrior can face a day when the universe decides to test them. The enemy had been waiting, hiding their true weapon until this day. The queen cut down their soldiers with ease, her voice thundering across the field. Her blade moved like lightning, her steps shook the ground. But then the sky itself split open, and the hidden weapon was revealed. From the enemy flagship came a weapon born of shadow and flame, a massive war machine, powered by alien science the queen had never seen before. Its cannons glowed with deadly light, its claws tore through the soil like a beast from a nightmare. The queen roared her challenge. Her army raised their weapons, and the final clash began. The queen struck first, charging through fire and smoke. Her blade cut into the machine's armor, sparks flying, but the machine did not fall. Instead, it struck back with a blast that shook the ground. The queen was thrown through the air, her armor shattered, her body broken. Her soldiers rushed to her side, shouting her name. But the enemy pressed harder, their ships raining fire, their soldiers swarming like insects. The queen tried to rise, her will strong, her pride burning, yet her legs trembled, her strength fading, and for the first time in her life, she could not stand. The battlefield turned against her. Her army faltered without her strength to guide them. Some fought to the last breath. Others scattered into the smoke. The queen, the heart of the army, had fallen. Enemy soldiers surged forward. Chains in their hands, the queen struck one down with her broken blade. But her body betrayed her. They surrounded her, weapons aimed at her chest, their voices mocking. "The fierce queen is nothing now," they jeered. "And nothing but broken bones and pride," she spat at them, her eyes still burning with fire. But no roar, no strike, no strength could save her from the truth. Her body was failing. Her throne was slipping away, and for the first time, she felt the cold hand of defeat dragged across the battlefield. The queen's vision blurred. Her blood painted the soil. Her ears rang with the cries of her dying soldiers. In the haze of smoke, she saw faces. The faces of her guards, fallen one by one, and then among the ruins, she saw him, a human slave, small and fragile compared to the warriors of her people. He had been nothing in her eyes, a tool, a servant, a creature from a weak and dying world. She had despised him, mocked him, called his kind pathetic. Yet now, when her warriors lay broken, when her generals were dead, when her crown hung by a thread, he was the only one left standing near her. The queen's pride raged within her. She would rather die than lean on a slave, rather burn than be saved by the weak. But her body was broken. Her legs could not carry her, and the enemy was closing in. The human looked at her, his eyes steady, not of fear, not of hate, but of resolve. He reached out his hand, offering it to her. The queen glared, her pride screaming, her voice a growl. "Do not touch me, slave," she spat, her breath heavy, her body trembling. But the human did not step back. He did not lower his hand. Behind them, enemy soldiers moved closer, weapons ready to strike. The queen's blade was broken, her army gone, her body failing. The choice was before her, burn in pride, or grasp the hand she once despised. The battlefield, the galaxy, and fate itself seemed to hold its breath. And in that moment, The fall of the queen was not just the fall of her body. It was the fall of her pride, the breaking of a wall built over years of power and fear. For the first time, she stood on the edge of something greater than herself, not a throne of steel, not a crown of fire, but a bond she never expected. The fierce warrior queen had been crippled in battle, and the one who stood ready to save her was the human slave she despised. The despised slave. The queen's body shook with pain as the human guided her away from the battlefield. Her pride screamed against it. Every step leaning on him felt like a knife cutting into her soul. She was the warrior queen, conqueror of worlds, feared across the stars. And yet, here she was, leaning on the arm of a slave she had cursed 100 times before. The human did not speak. His breath was steady, his steps firm. He carried her weight as if it meant nothing, as if saving her life was not strange or forbidden. His clothes were torn, his body bruised, but his eyes stayed calm. The queen hated that calmness, hated that he did not tremble before her. In her palace, she had called him weak. She had thrown orders at him like scraps to a dog. When he stumbled, she had mocked him. When he spoke too slowly, she had silenced him. To her, he was nothing, less than nothing, a creature of dust and frailty. And yet now, when her generals lay dead and her guards abandoned her, he was the one still standing. They moved through the ruins of the battlefield, fire glowing in the distance, smoke curling into the night sky. The queen tried to push him away, snarling through her pain. "I do not need your help. Leave me here, slave," she growled. But her legs betrayed her, collapsing beneath her, forcing him to catch her once again. The human's grip was strong, stronger than she expected. He lifted her without complaint, his arms steady despite her armor and weight. "You may despise me," he whispered, his voice low but unshaken. "But if I leave you, they will kill you." The queen turned her head, her pride burning, but she could not deny the truth. Every sound around them was danger. The stomp of enemy patrols, the crackle of flames, the echo of broken steel. The queen's warriors were gone, the battlefield lost. Only the slave's heartbeat beside her reminded her that she was not yet dead. The thought twisted inside her chest, heavier than her wounds. They found shelter among the ruins, a broken arch of stone that once belonged to a temple. The queen slumped against the wall, her breath ragged, her body trembling with pain. The human knelt beside her, tearing strips from his own clothes to bind her wounds. She watched in silence, her eyes narrowed, rage and confusion fighting inside her. "Why?" she hissed at last, her voice sharp as broken glass. "Why do you help me, after all I have done to you? After all the words, the chains, the cruelty?" The human looked at her for a long moment, his eyes dark but steady. "Because you are alive," he said simply. "And because I am human, and humans do not abandon." The words cut deeper than any blade. The queen turned her face away, hiding the storm in her eyes. No soldier of hers had stayed, no general, no captain, no guard, but a slave, a human slave, refused to let her die. The night grew colder, the fires burning low in the distance. The queen's strength faded, sleep pulled at her, but her mind did not rest. Visions of the battle returned, visions of her throne crumbling, visions of her people scattered. And always, beside those visions, the image of the human's calm face, steady and unyielding at dawn. The sound of enemy patrols echoed through the ruins. The queen tried to rise, her blade broken but still in her hand. But the human pushed her gently back, his voice firm. "You cannot fight now, not like this. Let me lead." Her pride howled, her rage boiled, but her body refused her command. She lowered the blade slowly, her eyes locked on him. For the first time in her life, she allowed another to stand before her in battle, and that other was a human slave she had once called worthless. The patrol passed close, shadows moving across the stone. The human guided her deeper into the ruins, every step measured, every breath silent. The queen watched him, her mind a storm. How could this fragile creature move with such calm? How could he risk his life for hers? When the danger faded, she whispered again, unable to stop herself, "You could have run. You could have been free. Why stay with me?" The human did not look at her, his eyes on the path ahead. "Because freedom means nothing if I abandon my soul," he said quietly. The queen closed her eyes, her heart twisting. She had ruled with iron. She had commanded with fear. She had believed loyalty came only from power. But this human, with no crown, no throne, no weapon, had shown her something else. A loyalty born not of fear, but of choice. As the sun rose over the ruined battlefield, the queen realized her war was no longer against her enemies. It was against her own pride, her own hatred, her own blindness. And though she would never say it aloud, not yet, she knew a truth she could not escape. The human slave she despised had become the reason she still lived. The first choice. The ruins were silent, but the silence was not peace. It was the silence of hunters waiting, of shadows moving, of enemies searching. The queen leaned against the broken wall, her wounds bound with cloth, torn from the human's shirt. Her breath shallow but steady, her pride still burned. But for the first time in her life, her pride was not her greatest weapon. It was her greatest chain. The human crouched low, his ears sharp, his eyes fixed on the path ahead. He had no armor, no sword, no rank or title, yet his body moved with purpose. He had been a slave, ordered, insulted, forgotten, but now he moved like a guardian. The queen watched him with narrowed eyes, her heart torn between fury and confusion. They could hear enemy patrols searching the ruins, their boots scraping stone, their voices sharp. The queen gripped the broken hilt of her blade, her knuckles white. "I will fight," she hissed, her voice low but full of fire. The human turned to her, his voice calm. "If you fight now, you will die." Her pride snarled inside her chest. She was the warrior queen. How could she let a slave decide her fate? Yet her body betrayed her again, her legs weak, her strength fading. And in that moment, she faced her first choice, not against the enemy, but against herself. The patrol came closer, their shadows falling across the rubble. The human pressed his back to the stone, his hand outstretched toward her. "Trust me," he whispered, his voice steady, his eyes unshaken. The queen's chest tightened. The word trust was foreign to her lips. She could refuse. She could rise and die fighting, her pride unbroken, her legend sealed in blood. Or she could take his hand, follow his lead, and live. The choice cut deeper than any blade. Her people had followed her into fire. Her enemies had feared her. But never had she been forced to follow a human slave. The queen's jaw clenched, her breath heavy. Slowly, with fire burning in her eyes, she placed her hand in his. Her voice was a growl. "If you betray me, I will kill you myself." The human gave no smile, no fear, only a nod. "Then I will not betray you." The patrol passed, unaware of the two figures pressed into the shadows. The human moved first, guiding her deeper into the ruins. His steps silent, his eyes sharp. The queen followed, every step heavy with rage, pride, and something new. A seed of curiosity. She had chosen, for the first time, to trust him. Hours later, they found shelter in the remains of a fallen tower. The queen slumped against the cold stone, her body trembling from the effort of walking. The human knelt again, checking her wounds, tightening the cloth to stop the bleeding. She glared down at him, her voice sharp. "You act as if you are my equal." His hands did not stop. His voice did not waver. "I act because you need me alive," he said. "And I need you alive too." The queen's eyes narrowed. "Slave does not speak so boldly to a queen." The human looked at her at last, his gaze steady. "A queen is nothing if she is dead." The words cut through her like a blade. Her pride screamed to strike him down, but her heart, buried under years of iron and fire, trembled. She could not answer, not because she lacked words, but because she knew. For once, he was right. That night, as the stars glowed through cracks in the ruined ceiling, the queen could not sleep. She watched the human as he kept watch at the doorway, his shoulders straight, his eyes never closing. Why had he not run? Why had he not taken his freedom and left her to die? The question burned inside her, louder than her pain, sharper than her wounds. At dawn, the sound of footsteps returned, heavier this time. Enemy scouts sweeping the ruins. The queen tried to rise, blade in hand, her body shaking, but the human moved before her, standing tall, no weapon in his hand, only courage in his eyes. He blocked the doorway, his voice low. "Stay back, I will hold them." The queen's breath caught, her pride roaring, her heart twisting. This was her second choice, to push him aside and die fighting, or to let him stand between her and the enemy. And once again, she chose. Not with words, but with silence. She lowered her blade, her eyes never leaving him, her voice whispering like smoke. "Do not fail me, human." The human nodded once, his body tense, ready for the first time. The queen understood what her people had felt when they followed her. Not fear, not chains, but something deeper. The choice to trust. And as the enemy shadows grew larger, she realized her story was no longer hers alone. The queen had made her first choice, and it was not the choice of a ruler, but of a woman who had finally taken the hand of the one she despised. The escape through shadows. The ruins were dark, lit only by the glow of distant fires. The air was heavy with smoke, every breath thick with ash, every sound sharp with danger. The queen leaned on the human's arm, her legs weak, her body broken, but her eyes still burning with defiance. The human moved carefully, guiding her through cracks and broken stones. His step silent, his senses sharp. Enemy patrols searched the battlefield, their armored boots echoing across the ruins. Their voices carried through the night, harsh and cold. "Find the queen. Bring her alive if possible. Dead if not." The queen's grip tightened on the broken hilt of her blade, fury twisting in her chest. But when she tried to rise against them, the human pressed her gently back into the shadows, whispering, "Not yet." She hated the words, hated that she obeyed, but she could not deny the truth. Her body was not the weapon it once was. Her strength had been stolen by the enemy's fire. The human, weak in her eyes for so long, now moved like her shield. He led her through the broken city, his eyes finding paths she never would have seen. They crawled through the skeleton of a shattered tower, dust falling with every step. They crossed under the rusting arch of a ruined gate, slipping past shadows where patrols marched. Each moment stretched like an eternity. The queen's breath sharp, her pride fighting her silence. Every time she reached for her blade, the human's hand stopped her, steady and firm. At last, they reached the edge of the battlefield, where the ruins melted into forests of twisted trees. The queen looked at the path ahead, dark and endless. She felt the sting of defeat, like poison in her blood. But the human's voice broke the silence, soft but unyielding. "We move forward, or we die here." The forest was no refuge. It was alive with shadows. Strange creatures watched from the branches, eyes glowing faintly in the smoke. The queen leaned heavier on the human, her pride whispering to push him away, yet her body betraying her again, her heart twisted with every step. The shame of needing him, burning more than her wounds. Deeper they went, the night filled with whispers. Enemy scouts moved through the trees, their torches flashing like fireflies, their weapons gleaming. The human stopped often, holding the queen still, pressing her against the bark, waiting in silence until danger passed. His eyes never wavered, his hands steady, his breath calm, even when hers shook. The queen studied him in the darkness, This human she had once mocked, this slave she had despised, now carried her life in his hands. She had always believed humans were fragile, soft, unworthy of the stars. But here, in the silence of the forest, she saw something else, a fire not of body, but of spirit. At one point, a patrol drew too close, their torches painting shadows across the queen's face. Her hand reached for her blade, her body trembling with rage. But the human leaned close, his voice no louder than a breath. "Trust me." He tossed a stone into the distance, the sound snapping through the night, and the patrol turned, chasing shadows away from them. The queen's eyes widened, her pride silent for once. It was not brute force that saved them. It was wit, calm, and courage. She whispered harshly, "You act as if you are a warrior." The human's answer was quiet. "No, I act as if I want us both to live." Hours passed, the forest thick and endless. The queen's strength faded, her body heavy, but still, she forced her eyes forward. The human never slowed, never faltered, carrying her weight when her legs refused her. She hated the weakness, but she could not ignore the truth. Without him, she would already be dead. At dawn, they found shelter in a cave, hidden beneath roots of ancient trees. The queen collapsed against the stone, her breath ragged, her eyes closing for a moment. The human searched the forest, returning with water from a stream, food gathered from the ground. He knelt beside her, offering it without a word. She stared at him, her pride warring with the gnawing hunger in her stomach. At last, she took it, her voice low, bitter but soft. "A queen does not eat from the hand of a slave." The human met her gaze calmly. "Then eat as a warrior, and survive." The queen's lips tightened, but she ate, her silence the closest thing to surrender she had ever known. The night fell again, darker than before, the enemy still hunting, the forest still alive with whispers. The queen lay awake, staring at the human who kept watch at the cave mouth. For the first time, she wondered if perhaps her strength had never been enough, and if perhaps the strength of this human was not in chains or crowns, but in something the galaxy had long ignored. The escape was far from over, but already shadows were breaking, not just around them, but inside her heart. The fierce warrior queen, crippled and humbled, began to see the human not as a slave, but as a flame that refused to die, even in the darkest night. The bond of survival. The cave was silent except for the queen's ragged breath. Her body trembled from exhaustion, her wounds aching, but her spirit still burned like fire. Beside her, the human kept watch, his back straight, his eyes fixed on the forest outside. He had no weapon, no armor, yet he sat like a guardian carved from stone. The queen shifted, her pride restless even in weakness. She could not believe that she, the feared warrior queen, had survived this far because of a human slave. Her heart resisted the truth, but her mind whispered it again and again. Without him, she would already be dead. As the night deepened, the human turned his head slightly. "You should rest," he said quietly. "You will need your strength when the enemy comes again." The queen glared, her voice sharp. "Do not command me, slave." But her words lacked their old fire, and he only nodded, saying nothing more. When sleep finally took her, her dreams were filled with fire and screams. She saw her army fall, her throne crumble, her enemies laughing as they dragged her through blood and ash. But in every dream, a figure stood in the shadows, a fragile form that refused to fall, the human, always there, always steady, like a flame against the storm. At dawn, the queen awoke to find him bringing water in cupped hands. His clothes were torn, his body scratched from the forest, yet his eyes remained calm. He offered the water, and though her pride hesitated, her thirst betrayed her. She drank, her voice a low growl. "You act as if you are more than a slave." The human met her gaze, his tone even. "I act because we must survive." "Queen," he said, "chains mean nothing when death is near." The queen fell silent, her mind twisting around his words. Perhaps chains did not matter. Perhaps crowns did not either. Perhaps only survival did. They traveled again. Deeper into the wilderness, the forest was full of dangers. Strange beasts with glowing eyes, rivers that raged like thunder, cliffs that crumbled under their weight. The human led her carefully, helping her climb, helping her cross, always placing himself in danger first. The queen wanted to hate him for it, but each time her anger faded faster, replaced by something else she could not name. One night, as they rested by a small fire, the queen spoke again, her voice quieter than usual. "Why do you do this, human? Why risk yourself for me? After all I have done to you." The human's eyes flickered in the firelight, his voice steady. "Because I am human, and humans do not abandon, not even those who hate us." The queen's breath caught, her pride shaken. Her warriors had abandoned her. Her generals had fallen. Her crown had slipped from her hands. Yet this human, despised and forgotten, refused to leave her side. It was a strength she did not understand, but she could not deny. Days passed, and with every step, their bond grew. The queen began to ask for his help without growls, her voice softer each time. He began to speak more, telling her stories of earth, of mountains and rivers, of wolves that hunted together, of humans who survived against impossible odds. She listened in silence, but inside, something shifted, a seed of respect. One evening, a storm broke across the forest. Rain poured, lightning split the sky, and thunder shook the ground. The queen shivered from the cold, her body too weak to resist. The human wrapped his torn cloak around her shoulders without a word, sitting close to shield her from the wind. She turned her head, her eyes searching his face. "Why?" she whispered, her voice almost lost in the storm. The human looked at her, his gaze unwavering. "Because even queens need warmth," he said softly. The queen lowered her eyes, her heart twisting, with something she had not felt in years. Not fear, not rage, not pride, but trust. Fragile and dangerous, the bond between them was no longer of survival alone. It was something deeper, something she could not yet admit. When the storm passed, the forest seemed quieter. The queen sat beside the human, her head bowed, her pride softer than before. For the first time, she did not see him as weak. She saw him as the reason her story had not ended on the battlefield. And though her lips never spoke the words, her heart whispered them in silence. Perhaps this human is more than a slave. Perhaps he is the reason I still live. The bond of survival had been forged, not by chains, not by crowns, but by choice. And that bond would soon be tested in fire. The last stand. The forest had carried them far, but not far enough. The enemy was relentless. Their scouts had tracked every broken branch, every trail of blood, every whisper of movement. The queen and the human reached the edge of a ravine, the ground falling away into darkness. Behind them came the sound of armored boots, voices sharp with hunger for blood. The queen leaned heavily on the human, her body trembling, her blade little more than a shard of steel. She knew the truth. They could not run any further. Not with her crippled body, not with so many enemies. The human's eyes scanned the trees, his breath steady, though his chest rose and fell quickly. "We make our stand here," he said firmly. No further retreat. The queen's pride burned, but her heart twisted. She had fought countless battles, commanded legions, crushed empires, yet now, standing broken and weary, she realized her last stand would not be with her generals or her army. It would be with the human slave she once despised. The enemy poured from the trees, their torches flaring, their weapons gleaming. They spread in a wide arc, surrounding the ravine, their laughter echoing through the night. One called out, "The queen has fallen. Surrender her, human, and perhaps we will spare you." The human's voice cut back sharp as iron. "I will never surrender her." The queen's eyes widened at his words. No soldier of hers had ever spoken with such fire. No general had ever risked so much for her life. And yet this human, with no crown, no armor, no rank, stood unshaken. Her pride cracked, and something new replaced it. Something dangerously close to admiration. The enemy charged, their boots pounding, their blades raised. The human pushed the queen gently against a stone wall, his voice low but firm. "Stay behind me," he said. "If they want you, they will have to go through me first." The queen gripped her broken blade, her eyes burning. "Then they will face both of us." The clash came like thunder. The first soldier rushed forward, and the human met him with nothing but a broken spear he had found in the ruins. He moved with raw determination, his strikes unpolished, but full of will. The soldier fell back, stunned by the force of a man who should have been weak. Another enemy came, then another. The queen limped forward, her blade flashing once more. Though her body was broken, her spirit was unyielding, and beside the human, she found strength she thought lost. Together they fought, not queen and slave, but partners, their backs to the ravine, their hearts burning as one. The battle raged in fire and shadow. The human's arms shook with effort, blood running from his wounds. The queen's body screamed in pain, every strike tearing at her broken form. But neither stepped back, neither yielded. The enemy grew furious, their numbers pressing harder. Yet for every strike that fell, the human blocked, the queen countered. Their movements were not perfect, but they were unbreakable. It was not skill alone that kept them alive. It was will, the kind of will that no chain or crown could command. At last, the enemy captain stepped forward, his armor black as night, his blade long and cruel. "You are nothing," he hissed, "a broken queen and her slave. I will end this." The queen's eyes narrowed, her voice low but steady. "Then come and try," she spat, her pride reborn in fire. The captain charged, his blade cutting through the air. The human met him head on, their weapons clashing with a sound like thunder. The queen, though weak, struck from the side, her broken blade tearing into his armor. Together, their strike was enough, and the captain fell with a cry. The remaining soldiers faltered, fear breaking through their rage. They saw not a crippled queen and a weak slave, but a force that would not bow, and one by one, they retreated into the shadows. Leaving the battlefield, to the unlikely pair, silence returned, broken only by the sound of rain dripping from the trees. The human fell to his knees, his body shaking, blood on his hands, his chest heaving. The queen knelt beside him, her own strength nearly gone. For a long moment, they said nothing, only breathing, only living. At last the queen spoke, her voice soft but fierce. "You stood when no one else did. You fought when all others fell, and you saved me. Though I gave you only hatred." The human lifted his head, his eyes weary but bright. "And I would do it again," he whispered, "because I am human, and humans do not abandon." The queen lowered her gaze, her pride no longer her shield. Her hand rested on his shoulder, not as a ruler to a slave, but as one warrior to another. This was their last stand. But it was also a beginning, a bond forged in fire, a truth the galaxy would one day learn, that in the darkest of nights, when crowns fall and thrones burn, it is the human heart that refuses to break. A new beginning. The forest was quiet at last. The echoes of battle faded, the enemy shadows gone. Only smoke and blood left behind. The queen sat beside the human, her body broken, but her spirit unyielding. For the first time since the war began, she felt something strange, something she had never allowed herself before. Gratitude. The human sat across from her, his hands torn, his face pale, but his eyes steady. He did not boast, he did not demand, he did not bow. He only breathed slowly, as if keeping himself alive was enough. The queen studied him in silence, her pride softer, her heart unsettled. She remembered the days she had mocked him, the words she had spoken. "You are weak," she had said, "a slave fit only to serve," and after all she had seen, after all she had lived, she knew the truth was far different. He was not weak, and he was never only a slave. The queen's people found them days later, warriors who had survived the fall of her army. They came ready to lift her in honor, to kill the human at her side. But the queen raised her hand, her voice sharp as steel. "No one touches him," she commanded. "He is under my protection." Her soldiers froze, shocked and confused. They whispered among themselves, "Why does she protect a human? Why does she defend a slave?" The queen stood, though her legs trembled, though her body screamed with pain. She looked at her people with fire in her eyes, and her words burned into the air. "This human saved me when all others fled," she declared. "He fought when my generals fell. He stood when my captains abandoned me. And he gave me loyalty when I gave him only hate." Her voice rose, echoing across the ruins. "If not for him, your queen would be dead, and our enemy would have claimed victory." The soldiers bowed their heads, silence falling over them like rain. Some still doubted, some still feared, but none could deny the truth before their eyes. A human had saved their queen, and in doing so, had saved their people. The legend had begun. The queen turned to the human, her pride no longer a wall, her voice softer now, but still strong. "You are no longer a slave," she said. "You are my equal, and you will walk beside me." The human's eyes widened, but he gave no words, only a steady nod. From that day, whispers spread across the galaxy, whispers of a warrior queen who fell in battle, crippled and broken, whispers of a human slave who refused to abandon her, who fought at her side, who saved her life, whispers of a bond no crown could command, no chain could break. The galaxy had always seen humans as weak, fragile, unworthy of the stars. But this story, this truth, carried like fire. It told of something greater than power, greater than pride, greater than fear. It told of the human heart, unyielding, unbroken, unstoppable. The queen sat on her throne once more, her body scarred, her strength tempered. At her side stood the human, no longer in chains, but in armor. Her people looked upon them, some with awe, some with doubt, but all with silence, for they knew a new age had begun. In the quiet of the night, when the fires burned low and the stars glowed above, the queen looked at the human, her voice low, almost gentle. "You were the one I despised most, yet you became the one I trust most." The human met her eyes, his words simple, "Because I am human, and humans do not abandon." The queen smiled then, a rare smile, sharp and strong, but true. It was the smile of someone who had lost everything, yet gained something greater. Not power, not victory, but a bond that no enemy could destroy. A bond that would change the future of her people, and perhaps the future of the stars. And so the story ended where it began, in fire and battle. But from the ashes rose a new beginning. A fierce warrior queen, crippled but unbroken, and a human, once a slave, now her equal, now her strength, now her legend. The galaxy would never forget. The queen who bowed to none, and the human who made her bow to trust. Together, they became a story whispered across the stars. Not of chains, not of crowns, but of a bond that proved, once more, humans are special,